Archimedicoach. In this section, we are going to discuss about pharmacology. In pharmacology, we already discussed about the autonomic nervous system in the previous part, and in autonomic nervous system, we discuss about the basically parasympathetic system and how the parasympathetic system is work, what they are doing. And in previous one, we are also discussing about their receptors of the parasympathetic nervous system. And the parasympathetic nervous system is basically includes the cholinergic systems or the drug of cholinergic system, in which we are basically going to discuss about the acetylcholine, their receptors, and the drug which is acting on these receptors. So basically in this topic we are going to discuss about the cholinergic drugs or the anticholinergic drugs. The cholinergic drugs, maybe they are acting as a direct acting or indirect acting. What is direct and what is indirect, we discuss everything in this topic about in detail of these cholinergic and anticholinergic drugs. So let's start our topic. In this topic we are basically about discussing about the cholinergic drugs. Before it, we are going to see this picture which is representing here. The red color is representing here sympathetic system, and the blue one is representing here parasympathetic system. In our whole body, what are the region in the different parts of our body, how the parasympathetic system is acting and how the sympathetic system is acting. And how the parasympathetic system is acting, I already told you in the previous topic of the part first of autonomic nervous system, in which we discuss about it. Parasympathetic system is basically they sending the impulses. It means they are stimulating the different parts of our body. After that they're doing contraction and then secretion in the different parts where the glandular secretion is happening. So they are basically they stimulating, contracting, and they secreting. It means their maximum chances is to be they increase the glandular secretion. It means everything is increased except to they decreasing the heart rate. It means that leads to the bradycardia of the parasympathetic system. And we are going to see here about the several points. We are going to see first parasympathetic, because now we are discussing here parasympathetic nervous system, and parasympathetic is representing by the blue color. Suppose that in eye they are doing contraction, and the term is for the contraction is, we can see there is a meiosis. We can say there is the meiosis is happen in the eye. Next point, we can see in the trachea what is happening. I already told you there is a constriction and increase in the secretion. There is a stimulation, constriction, and then secretion of the glandulars. What are the glands are present in it. Next one, we can see in the uterus and bladder, same. They are going to contract the detrusor muscles and relax the trigone and sphincter. This point is important. They are relaxing the trigone part of the bladder and the sphincter, but they contract the detrusor muscle. Suppose that this is our bladder here. In the bladder here a trigone like a structure is present, not like this, of course, it's like this. This trigone is gets what relaxed, and the sphincter is gets relaxed. These both are sphincter, internal and external sphincters, and this trigone are these all three parts are gets relaxed in the parasympathetic nervous system. But these all detrusor muscle are going to be contract. Detrusor muscles are going to be contract in which parasympathetic nervous system. That's same is happen in the genitalia in the male. They also provided the stimulation and the erection of the penis. Next, we can see in the lacrimal glands they also stimulate, and the secretion of tear is more from our lacrimal gland. Next one, we can see in the salivary gland they increases the watery secretion from the saliva. Their salivaceous secretion will be increased. In the heart rate, I already told you in the parasympathetic system the heart activity will be decreased. It means they promotes the bradycardia, that they are decreasing. They decrease the rate, they decrease the contractility of the heart muscles. In the gastrointestinal system, same. They stimulate, contract, and secretion will be increased. It means they increasing the muscles motility and the tone, and then glandular secretion will be production is increased. So this is all about the action of the parasympathetic nervous system in the different parts of our body. We have to memorize it. Before we are going to discussing about the cholinergic drugs, we have to know about the what are the receptors in our body. the muscarinic 5 types, where they located, and what are the parasympathetic axon. Just opposite to it, sympathetic system axon is it. So first we are going to see about it. We can see here several types. What are the direct cholinergics is it? Direct cholinergics is basically the stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system and acting on the muscarinic and nicotinic receptors. Basically nicotinic you know now, nicotinic neuronal and nicotinic muscular. Nicotinic muscular is basically providing the skeletal muscles relaxant drugs, and the nicotinic neuronal is basically ganglionic blocker drugs, and the muscarinic is basically 5 types: M1, M2, M3, M4, M5. These are the receptors basically where they are located. On the basis of their location, the action is performed by them. Same as the indirect cholinergics are the drug. They are the 2 types: acetylcholinesterase inhibitors. They inhibiting the acetylcholinesterase metabolism. So we can see here where they are located. The muscarinic one is located in the central nervous system, and they increasing the cognition. They also present in the GIT. They increase the secretion in GIT. M3 receptors are present in this much area. We have to memorize it. In GIT, in glands, in bronchi, detrusor, circular muscles, or the iris, or the blood vessels. So this all we discussed in the previous class. So we are now not going to discuss in detail about it. We are now moving towards the our topic, cholinergic drugs. We can see cholinergic drugs. What does it mean, cholinergic? Cholinergic is basically name coming from the acetylcholine. They are the neurotransmitter of the parasympathetic nervous system. Same as in the sympathetic system, their neurotransmitter is epinephrine. That's why they are called as epinephrine. Also called as adrenergic or the adrenaline. That's why these drugs are called as adrenergic drugs. Same here in the parasympathetic system, there is a neurotransmitter is what? Parasympathetic system, cholinergic, acetylcholine. That's why they are called as cholinergic drugs. And here is the adrenergic drugs. That's why the cholinergic drugs we are going to discussing here, they are working in the parasympathetic nervous system. They are working 2 manners. Basically, they acting directly or indirectly. It's based on their action, how they perform their action in it. So we are going to see cholinergic drugs are basically producing the effect similar to the acetylcholine. What the acetylcholine is doing, the same cholinergic drug is doing. It means the acetylcholine is increasing something effect, the same cholinergic drugs are also increasing because their action is same as acetylcholine. So cholinergic drugs are basically 2 types. Either they acting direct or either they acting indirect. When they acting direct, they direct bind to the receptors and they performing their action. So we are going to see first direct acting cholinergic drugs, and direct acting cholinergic drugs are also increasing the effect of the parasympathetic system. So these drugs are also called as parasympathomimetic drugs. Mimetics means they performing mimicry of this same activity. So the parasympathetic activity will be increased after taking these drugs. So we can also call these drugs as parasympathomimetics. These drugs are also called as cholinomimetics because their action, these drugs are also called as cholinergic drugs. So it means these drugs, after the taking of these drugs, they performing the cholinergic activity is supervised, they increasing. That's why these drugs are also mimicry of the cholinergic system. So these drugs are also called as cholinergic drugs, or they are also called as cholinomimetics. When they are acting on the muscarinic receptor, these drugs, they are called as muscarinic cholinomimetics. When they are acting on the nicotinic receptor, they are called as nicotinic cholinomimetics. When these drugs are acting directly on the muscarinic receptor, these drugs are called as direct acting muscarinic cholinomimetics. When these drugs are acting on the nicotinic receptors directly, they are called as direct nicotinic cholinomimetics, or they are also called as cholinergic agonist. They are also called as cholinomimetics. They are also called as parasympathomimetics. So these all the terms are same. These terms are important to know about the pharmacological group of any drug. So we have to know about it, how we are going to produce the naming of these drugs. So in the direct cholinergics is also called as what? Cholinomimetics, because they are doing mimicry of the cholinergic drugs. They are basically acting on the 2 receptors, either muscarinic or either nicotinic. So they are called as muscarinic cholinergic agonist, or they are also called as muscarinic cholinomimetics. Same, they are called as nicotinic cholinomimetics or nicotinic cholinergic drugs. Now we are going to say the nicotinic are basically, we are going to see 4 drugs. Nicotine is itself a drug, they acting. Or next one, cetirizine, we can see lobelinic hydrochloride or the varenicline. These are the 4 drugs. Out of 4 we have to memorize two. First two drugs are important here. We have to memorize. They are helpful into the preventing from the causing a smoking dependence. The patient gets a smoking dependence. So these drugs are used for the prevention of them. Nicotine and vanicillin. Now we are going to discuss about the muscarinic agonist or muscarinic cholinomimetics. These are the nicotinic. They're directly acting on the nicotinic receptors. Now the muscarinic agonist. They are the two classes of the muscarinic agonist, amides and cholinesters. Amides are the basically the groups of these drugs are nature is amide and their cholinesters. Cholinester in nature or the amide nature. Amide nature is basically they are the lipid soluble. These drugs are basically lipid soluble. What are the drugs belongs to amide group in the cholinergic agonist? These all the drugs are soluble lipid. They all are lipid soluble. When any drug is lipid soluble, they are easily crosses the blood-brain barrier. It means their action is performed inside our central nervous system. So it is pretty true. These drugs are lipid soluble. It means they crosses the blood-brain barrier. Yes, they crosses the blood-brain barrier. It means these drugs are acting centrally. These drugs are enters inside our cerebrum or they enters inside our brain and they perform their action. That's why these drugs are called as central acting drugs. The amides are the central acting drugs. Yes, amides are the central acting drugs. In next point we can see the cholinesters are the lipid insoluble. These are the insoluble drugs. It means it is not soluble in lipids. It means it not going to cross the blood-brain barrier. It means simple. When these drugs, cholinester drugs are not going to cross the blood-brain barrier, so these drugs action is not performed inside our central nervous system. So these drugs are acting peripherally. They acting in our thorax region, they acting in our abdominal cavities, organs or the different parts, they acting in our hands, lower limbs, upper limbs. What are the regions present peripherally? They are not acting centrally. So these drugs not crossing the blood-brain barrier, so these drugs are acting peripheral. So we can see here these drugs are does not crossing the blood-brain barrier, so these drugs are peripherally acting. They crossing the blood-brain barrier, they centrally acting. And that's why these drugs centrally acting is also useful in the topical use. We can use in the ocular manifestation, any disease related to the eyes. So these drugs are used which crossing the blood-brain barrier. This is all about their classification. Now we are going to discuss in detail about the amides and cholinesters. They are the direct muscarinic cholinomimetics. The first amides, how you can call the amides is also, they are also called as cholinergic agonists. It is true. Yeah, it is true. They are also called as direct acting. Yeah, direct acting muscarinic cholinomimetics. It is also true. This pilocarpine, there is a first drug of the under the amide group, that is pilocarpine. The pilocarpine is the drug is basically useful into the treatment of xerostomia. When any patient is having, there is a dryness of mouth is occurred. Xero means dryness and stomia means mouth. Xero means dry, stomia means mouth. There is a dryness of mouth is happened in any patient. And what type of patient the dryness of mouth is happened? In the Zika syndrome, any patient is having the Zika syndrome or the Sjogren's syndrome, patient related these diseases are coming in our pathology topics. But now you have to memorize the Zika syndrome and Sjogren's syndrome in the patient having xerostomia is happened. Also in the some patients having radiotherapy we giving in the neck and head region. We are giving the radiotherapy. These patients is also having xerostomia is appeared. So and when we are going to giving the radiotherapy to these patients, these patients are having oral cancers. So we preventing the oral cancers, we provide the radiotherapy in the neck and head region. So the patient is suffer from the xerostomia. So we can also use the pilocarpine as a treatment, or we can use as a treatment for this xerostomia. Next point we can see the drug of choice. We can see here the drug of choice in the closed angle glaucoma. Closed angle glaucoma, when the patient trabecular network will be gets closed and the trabecular network is not open to provide the trabecular flow will be proper way. So we use the drugs like the miotic drugs, the contacting, that is physiostigmine and the ecothiophat. These are the two drugs along with pilocarpine is also used. We can use any of them. Next one, mechanism of action. These drugs are increasing the trabecular outflow. When the angle of our eyes, there is a trabecular meshwork is present. When they gets blocked, it leads to the closed angle glaucoma. When there is these drugs, after taking these drugs, it leads to the opening of them and the proper flowing of the trabecular outflow. They increasing the trabecular meshwork and the opening of it, so its proper amount of outflow is happening. What are the side effect or the adverse effect of after taking these drugs, the pilocarpine? Their adverse effect we can see here. The patient having suffered from the accommodation spasm. There is a patient having ciliary muscles, what they are present in that area will be gets suffer from them after the taking these drugs. The patient suffer from the headache and retinal detachment is it. These drugs are amides. Amides drugs are crossing the blood-brain barrier. That's why they're producing the toxicity. They're producing the side effect in our central nervous system, and they're producing side effect in our retinal detachment. In the side effect in the central nervous system, they produces headache. These are all the side effect of these drugs. In next point, we are going to see what are the drug we used in the treatment of xerostomia, the drug of choice. What are the choice of the drug? Is it in the case of xerostomia, we are not going to take the pilocarpine because they produces severe side effect in our central nervous system. They produces headache, they produces accommodation spasm, retinal detachment. So we are going to take what? We are going to take cevimeline. It is the drug. It is the drug of choice for the xerostomia. Dryness of mouth gets prevented by them. Next we can see the next class of it will be choline ester drugs. Choline ester drugs is also direct acting muscarinic cholinomimetic drugs, and these are inside this the first drug is acetylcholine itself. Acetylcholine itself is the drug is very short lifespan, or we can say like this, there is a very short lifespan or the short half-life of these drugs. That's why we are not going to use it in the many purpose in our general life, because these drugs are metabolized inside our plasma by a special enzyme that is pseudocholinesterase. Pseudocholinesterase is the enzyme which is always available in our plasma. When these drugs are formed and released in the plasma, all the drugs are metabolized very fastly. And mainly what happened in the general way, these many drugs are passing through the liver and then gets metabolized, but these drugs gets metabolized inside the plasma because there is a pseudocholinesterase enzymes are present. It leads to the metabolism of these drugs, and that's why these drugs are very short lifespan. So these drugs we can't use so these drugs we are not able to use in a systemic way or the topical way, because these all drugs gets metabolized in our plasma. So we have to do something for the when we want to use these drugs, so we have to do something with these drugs. Maybe some modification will be done in these drugs. We can see here what are the first use of these drugs. They are using in the mitotic in ocular surgeries. When the contraction of ciliary muscles will be done in the ocular surgery, we use these drugs, that is acetylcholine basically. When we want to modify these drugs and taking in the systemic way or the systemic route, we can see here effective in systemic route after the acetylcholine gets methylated. When we are going to methylate the acetylcholine on the beta methylation is done in the acetylcholine, the beta part is having methylated, it leads to something form a new compound that is called as methacholine. After the methylation of acetylcholine, there is a form methacholine drug, and these drugs are now resistant to the pseudocholinesterase. And you know now the pseudocholinesterase is the enzyme which is present in our plasma that is responsible for the breakdown or the metabolism of the acetylcholine, and it leads to what? It leads to decrease the concentration, or it leads to the short half-life of what? Acetylcholine. So now these drugs, methacholine is what? Resistant. It means what? When these methacholine drugs are resistant, it means their half-life will be increased after the beta methylation of the acetylcholine. Same in which we can see next one, the bethanacholine and carbachol. Bethanachol and carbachol are the another two modification of these drugs, acetylcholine. They are resistant to both either true or either pseudocholinesterase. They are present in plasma. These are the two cholinesterases. From these, the bethanachol and carbachol, this also gets resistant from them. So we can use in the different parts where we can use the bithanacol and carbachol are more, resistant to the pseudocholinesterase than the methacholine. You have to memorize it. Especially bithanacol, we have to memorize it. They are the more resistant to it, so it is more useful for the systemic use. And when we can use it? After the methylation or after doing there some modification in these drugs. Why we not use directly acetylcholine? Their half-life will be very short because it gets metabolized by the pseudocholinesterase enzyme in the plasma. Now we are going to see what are the differences between the bithanacol, carbachol and the methacholine. We can see here, suppose that this is the bithanacol, carbachol and the methanacol. What are their role and what are their usage of these drugs in our body? We can see there is two types of receptor in the parasympathetic nervous system, either muscarinic receptor or either nicotinic receptor. So these drugs are gets binding in the different types of receptor. On the muscarinic, we can see muscarinic is having 5, basically M1, M2, M3, M4, 5. That's why we can see here the bithanacol is more susceptible for the M3 and M1 and less for the M2. So it gets bind on the M3 receptors in the GIT region, basically in the blood vessels. These all are the related with M3 in the trachea, and that's all these glands are the basically M3 receptors are more important. So they are binding to the M3 receptors, and when they binding to the nicotinic, the having effect will be 0. So this drug having side effect of the nicotinic, side effect is basically 0. So these drugs are best drug for the usage, and these drugs are basically used in the bladder atony and gastroparesis. These two conditions these drugs are used, that is bithanacol. Next one we can see carbachol. These are the more susceptible for the also M3 more than M2. These are also acting on the M3 parts, and now you know about it, M3 receptors where it located in our body. Either you don't know, so you have to go and watch the part 1 on the autonomic nervous system about it. M3 receptors are more susceptible where the M3 receptors are present. These drugs are not used in the systemic route because these drugs having more severe side effect or the more severe effect on our body. Why? Because they are acting on the nicotinic receptor. The nicotinic effect will be also shown maximum amount. So we don't want any side effect in our body, so we are not taking these drugs in the systemic route. These drugs are only used in the mitotic ocular surgery as we discussed previously. Next one we can see methanacol is the drug. They are acting more on the M2, and M2 is basically acting, and their side effect will be on the nicotinic will be moderate effect on the nicotinic receptor. So these drugs can be taken basically in the bronchial asthma testing. Any the patient having bronchial asthma is it or not, we are going to test by the testing name is bronchial challenge test. They are acting on the M3 receptor. So these are all about the differences of the bithanacol, carbachol and methacholine. We have to mainly memorize their clinical uses. We are not going to detail, and what are the uses of these drugs, so to memorize from here. Now in next section we are going to see this is all about the direct acting drugs and the direct acting part of the parasympathetic drugs or the cholinomimetic drugs or the cholinergic agonist drugs. Now we are going to see about the indirect acting drugs. Indirect acting drugs are also called as indirect cholinergic drugs, or these drugs are indirect cholinergic drugs, or they are also called as indirect what? Cholinomimetic drugs, and they are also called as cholinesterase inhibitor because these are going to inhibit the acetylcholinesterase enzyme, and they are also called as anti-cholinesterase drugs. When they are inhibitor of the cholinesterase, they are also called as anti-cholinesterase. So these all the drugs are indirectly acting. They are not going to bind directly to the receptors. They are acting indirectly basically, and inside it there are two types of drugs are working here: irreversible group and irreversible group drugs. And inside the reversible and irreversible group of drugs, we are going to see basically about first group is organophosphate. These groups are basically irreversible in nature. When the organophosphate drugs are going to bind in the receptors, they are not going to reversible. They are not going to reversible in nature. Why they are not going to reversible? Suppose that this acetylcholinesterase enzyme, this is the acetylcholinesterase enzyme, having two sides. Suppose that this orange color is what representing acetylcholine enzyme. This is having two area. We can see here, one is this one and one is this one. This is called as asterisk site and this one is called as anionic site. In the asterisk site, there is organophosphate. OP is representing here organophosphate. These organophosphate having phosphate group, these phosphate group are going to bind on the asterisk site of the acetylcholinesterase enzyme. What happened here? The organophosphate group of drugs are going to bind on the acetylcholinesterase enzyme on their asterisk site. And what happened? The anionic site? Anionic site is open now. For the early stage, the anionic site is open. We can see what happening here. In the organophosphate binds with phosphate on the asterisk site, and they are reversible. When in the initial stages, when the organophosphate drugs are binding to these acetylcholinesterase enzymes, it will be reversible. But after some time, it will be going for the aging. Aging is the term basically representing here. When after some time, these drugs will be binding with phosphate group is removed and they forming a strong bond. What type of bond they are forming? They are the much stronger bond is formed. We can see here, after some time, these bonds are going to aging. These bond, what the bonds phosphate group is binding to the this phosphate group bonds is binding to the asterisk site are going to be much stronger bond formation. Why they are going to much stronger bond formation? As the time passing, there is a aging is happening in the bond, or the aging is happening at that site of it, and this aging is leads to phosphate bond is replaced by much stronger bond, and these bonds are difficult to break by the anything in our medical science. It's get not broken by the anything. So these receptors or these enzymes are gets broken. Sorry, these enzymes are gets finally destroyed. They are not useful for us now. So organophosphate are binding to them irreversible manner. Somehow when the organophosphate are binding in the primary way, we can say like this, primarily when they are binding in the initial stages, we are going to I can say like this, we are going to perform, or we are going to exchange of this phosphate group with the several other drugs. We want to remove it. We can see the OxyMs is the group of drugs. The OxyMs are the another group of drugs. They are effective in two conditions. When any patient is having organophosphate poisoning, when any patient is having organophosphate groups are going to bind on the acetylcholinesterase enzyme, and in the initial stage, then we are going to exchange these phosphate group bonds and binds with some another type of drugs, and it will lead to be reversible manner. But in initial stage it will be reversible, but when once it will bind for the long time or the aging is happening, it leads to what? Forming the irreversible bond. So we can't do anything. But in the initial stages, when the aging is not happening, we are going to do what? We are going to take some drugs that is under the OxyMs group. We can see there is two effective conditions. No aging is happening, so we can use this, or the empty anionic site. The anionic site is must be empty here. This anionic site we can see here. This must be empty till that time we are going to prevent from the organophosphate poisoning. We can see when the OxyMs or the oxime is binding to the acetylcholinesterase reactivator OxyMs, it means they are binding where? Anionic site. The oxymes are going to bind because aesthetics we can see here. The aesthetic sites will be what? Aesthetic sites will be busy with the organophosphate and phosphate group. They are binding with the much stronger bond. That time, before the binding to the much stronger time, or we can say like this, before the binding to them, there is an anionic site is free. We are going to now bind the oxymes to this anionic site. We can see we are going to bind this anionic site and remove the organophosphate and break the phosphate bond from the asterisk site, and the removal of the organophosphate group of the drugs from the acetylcholinesterase, and this activity will be gets reversed, and the acetylcholinesterase enzyme activity will be increased in this way. either we have no any clue about that ki how we are going to introduce any drugs after the organophosphate groups is bind and the aging is happening. We can't do anything about it. Before, in the primary stage, we are going to do oxygens group is taken and then binding to the anionic site and will be removed by the phosphate group, and from the ester site, and we can do. So we are going to see what are the organophosphate groups. They are going to bind acetylcholinesterase drugs and they are producing poisoning in our body. So we can see the organophosphate groups drug are used basically not for the human help. They are against the human life. All the organophosphate drugs are used against the human life, or they are the anti-human, we can say like this. Why anti-human? We can see they are the warfare agents. They are used as organophosphate agents are using as a warfare agent. In the World War, we can use this. In the Vietnam War, we know about it. The warfare agents are basically, these are the chemical agents or the pharmacological or the drug agents we are using in the World War, or like this appearance. Next point, we can see these are also called as warfare agents, are also called as the nerve gas. Next point, we can see the sarin, cyclosarin and taboon, or the Soman and VX. These all are the warfare agents. These all are the warfare agents is used in the World War or the any country's war. We use these different types of chemical organophosphate drugs. Next one, we can see what are the clinical use of these drugs. There is not much more clinical drugs are utilized in our body. The group of organophosphate, basically we can say ecothiopate, and we can see the first one is they are also used in the mitotic close angle glaucoma, but nowadays they are not used. No more prefer to use these drugs because their side effect will be very severe in our body. And we can see next point is the fluoxetine and the ecothiopate are basically used for the several times, but the ecothiopate is also producing the several severe side effects in our body, that is called as iris cyst is produced by them. That's why we are also not going to use these drugs, much more effect in them. But the organophosphate is most effective for us in the case of insecticides or the pesticides. In the farmer using these drugs is the chemical agents to killing the insect, to killing the pest or the pesticides. They acting as a pesticide agent or the insecticide agent. And what are these organophosphate drugs or the agent doing on the insects? These drugs are going to bind on the receptors of the insect and they're producing the cholinergic poisoning inside their body. And what happened after the cholinergic poisoning is producing? All the cholinergic system activity will be increased. What we know from the initial, all the parasympathetic activity will be increased in their body, and will leads to the spastic paralysis of their muscles. When their spastic paralysis leads to the insects will be die. Next point, we can see what are the cholinergic poisoning is happening. Suppose that these drugs, insecticide and pesticides are mainly used by the farmers in our field. When these insecticides or pesticides used by the farmer, some farmers gets infected by this organophosphate poisoning and come to you. So we are going to use some drugs or some test to know about it. The farmer is either suffer from this organophosphate poisoning or not. We can see here the cholinergic poisoning is basically represented by the three main features. We can see the agitation, maybe the farmer or the patient suffer from the agitation. The secretion will be increased in his body, the salivation, lacrimation, everything will be increased. And the pinpoint pupil, the pupil gets constricted that much. We are using the torchlight and check it. Their pupil is like pinpoint is the same. So there is a two differential diagnosis of the pinpoint pupil in the patient having cholinergic poisoning or not. There may be the patient suffer from the opioid toxicity, and opioid drugs will be taken by the patient, morphine, codeine, like this, any drug. Maybe there is a pontine myelinolysis will be happen. Pontine myelinolysis, there is a demyelination of the pons in that area. It will leads to the two differential diagnosis of the pinpoint pupil. So these patients will be mainly suffer from the cholinergic. The treatment of cholinergic poisoning can be done by the, what are the symptoms of cholinergic poisoning? What happened to the patient having cholinergic poisoning is happen? Suppose that in the muscarinic, some muscarinic symptoms will be increases, some nicotinic symptoms will be increases. What happened to the nicotinic symptoms is increasing in the patients? There is a weakness in the patient, or there are different types of symptoms will be appearing in the patient. What happened to the muscarinic symptoms? The patient is having meiosis, blurred vision, sweating, and the excessive respiratory syndromes will be appeared. The different types of symptoms will be appear in the patient. We can also say like this: the patient is having secretions, all the glandular secretions will be increased, or the nausea, libation, hypotensions, or the urgency, diarrhea. These all are the symptoms. Basically, what are the symptoms done in the cholinergic activity is done in the parasympathetic system. All the activity will be upregulated, or they all are increases. We are going to reduce it by the atropine drugs. They are the anticholinergic drugs we are going to take, and they reduces all these symptoms. So what are the symptoms is decreases by the atropine. Basically it is the anti-muscarinic drug, so it decreases the muscarinic symptoms. It means what are the receptors is present in the muscarinic region which were located, all that activity is increased will be reduced after the taking atropine, because it is anti-muscarinic. What the muscarinic action is done or the increases by them will be decreased by it. So these atropine will be decreased, and it is the drug of choice in the patient is having cholinergic poisoning. Next point, we can see the also oximes are taken in the some cases. When there is a decrease of nicotinic symptoms, we have to decrease it, then we take oximes also, and it is the most specific drug for the decrease in nicotinic symptoms, and the muscarinic symptoms will be decreased by the atropine drug. Next point, we can see what are the drugs is the choice of drug for the cholinergic poisoning. We are taking in basically in India, we can see there is a pralidoxim. Pralidoxim is the most common drug is used in India, and we can also say there is a diacetyl monoxim or the obizodoxim. So these are the three drugs. Obizodoxims, we can see pralidoxim or the diacetyl monoxim. These are the three drugs which are preferred to use in India as a cholinergic poisoning prevention. Hope you understand. Next point we can see. Next group is carbamates. First we discuss about the organophosphates. Carbamates is another group we can see in which carbamates are the drug they binding to the acetylcholinesterase sites. Now we are going to discuss only discuss about what anticholinesterase drugs. They are the inhibitor drugs. They are the indirect acting drugs. They are not going to bind directly to the receptor. So these carbamates group of drug are also binding to the acetylcholinesterase enzyme, and they binding on both the sides. Suppose that this is the acetylcholinesterase enzyme here, and here is the two sides of it. We can see two sides, one side and the two side. This side is estric site and this side is anionic site. The carbamates drug are binding on both the sides, either estric site or anionic site. These drugs are binding on both sides, but organophosphate is mainly where? Mainly and the estric site, and they forming permanent bond. Prevention primarily they forming the reversible bond, and after the aging they forming permanent bond or the irreversible. But here these carbamates are binding to the estric and anionic both the sides, except adrophonium. Adrophonium is also included in the carbamates group. It is the drug which is binding to this only anionic part of the acetylcholinesterase enzyme, and this anionic bind, the adrophonium drug is only binding here. The adrophonium is the drug is under the group carbamates. Carbamates having several type of groups we discuss later. For now you have to memorize the adrophonium is also under the carbamates group of drugs, and this bind to the only anionic site. They are forming the ionic bond. Anionic bond is not that much stronger. These bonds are gets broken very easily, so their lifespan is very short. And about the other drugs of the carbamates, they are binding on both the estric and anionic sites. So these carbamates are not exactly irreversible in nature. The carbamates are basically pseudo irreversible. Why they are called as pseudo irreversible? They, after the binding for a long time, these drugs are, we can say like this, these drugs are binding on both the sides, estric and anionic, but after some time these drugs are automatically relieved by them, or automatically released from these receptors, or where they binding the acetylcholinesterase enzymes, they will be automatically released from there. We can say like this, these drugs are automatically open, or they are automatically released from there or exit from there. But after its long time, they are not going to bind in an irreversible manner. So these drugs are also called as pseudo irreversible. And why the adrophonium is so acting? Because it's binding to the only to the anionic site, and they are binding with the ionic bond, and these ionic bonds are very weak, not that much weak, but they are the weak bond, so their half-life will be very shorter. Now we are going to see what are the carbamates group drugs Carbamates are having divided into three groups: tertiary, quaternary, and some usage are directly used as a fungicides, herbicides, pesticides are used of these carbamates groups. The tertiary amine, all the tertiary amine drugs are lipid soluble, and now you know all the lipid soluble drugs are crossing the blood brain barrier, so these drugs are acting centrally also, and their side effects will be maybe produced central. Now you can see the quaternary amines, they are lipid insoluble. It means what? These drugs are lipid insoluble when these drugs are binding to the only in the peripheral part, so their action will be only peripheral part, so their action will be maybe digestive system, respiratory system, circulatory system, or the different systems, but they are not acting central system or the central nervous system. So these drugs are do not crossing the blood brain barrier, these are crossing the blood brain barrier. Now we are going to discuss one by one what are the tertiary amine drugs, what are the quaternary amine drugs, and what are the fungicides. Okay, hope you understand. Now I say first point is tertiary amine. Tertiary amine, they crossing the blood brain barrier, yes. It means they are acting centrally or peripherally. They are acting centrally. That's why they are called as centrally acting drugs. The first from the tertiary amine is the physiostigmine is the first drug. They are used as a treatment of closed angle glaucoma. First point. Second, they are the drug of choice. They are the drug of choice for the treatment of atropine toxicity. Any patient is having toxicity of atropine, or the higher amount of higher dose of the atropine will be taken in the body, that it will be toxicity can be prevented by the atropine. Sorry, toxicity can be prevented by the physiostigmine. Next point we can see belladonna poisoning. Atrapa belladonna poisoning. When any patient is having belladonna poisoning, atrapa belladonna poisoning, it will be also act as a prevention in them. Or the dhatura poisoning. Dhatura poisoning is also prevented by the physiostigmine. The first point is atropine poisoning. Second, there is the atrapa belladonna poisoning or the dhatura poisoning. These all three poisoning can be prevented by the physiostigmine. So this drug is very important. They are also used in the closed angle glaucoma. Now what are the source of this physiostigmine? The source of physiostigmine is obtained from a plant. That one is called as calabar bean. Calabar bean is the plant food product, and the Physiostigma venenosum. Physiostigma venenosum is the plant from where we obtain the physiostigmine. And also the some drugs, that is the donepezil, rivastigmine, or the galantamine. These are the three drugs is used in the treatment of Alzheimer's disease. In Alzheimer's disease, what are the drugs we use? Physiostigmine, donepezil, rivastigmine, and galantamine. These are the four drugs we use in the Alzheimer's disease treatment. So we have to memorize from here. Why using this we discuss later, but for now Alzheimer's disease is treated by this drug physiostigmine, donepezil, rivastigmine, galantamine. And what is the tertiary amine? First drug is physiostigmine for us. Now we are going to see quaternary amines. Quaternary amines are crossing blood-brain barrier? No, they are peripherally acting. So these drugs are peripherally acting agent, and they are used in quaternary amine drugs are used in myasthenia gravis. Myasthenia gravis, what happened in the disease of myasthenia gravis? The body forming antibodies against the receptors of acetylcholine receptor. So all the acetylcholine receptors are gets masked by the antibodies. So the acetylcholine is not going to bind to these receptors, and the muscle is gets fatigued, and the patient is having contraction will be less. So we can see here this in the myasthenia gravis patient, there is neuromuscular antibodies will be formed, and they are the competitive inhibitor of acetylcholine. They are going to bind to the acetylcholine receptor because they are the competitive inhibitor. They are inhibiting the activity of acetylcholine. And what are the drugs basically used in the myasthenia gravis patient? We can see for the prevention or the binding to the competitive inhibition is it edrophonium is the first drug is used for the diagnosis of the myasthenia gravis. How it act? The drug of choice for the diagnosis of myasthenia gravis is used as edrophonium. To differentiate the myasthenia gravis and cholinergic crisis, we also use edrophonium. And the treatment of paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia, we also use edrophonium. And edrophonium is a drug is under the which group? Quaternary amines. We can see now the adrophonium drug, how we used in the case of the patient suffer from myasthenia gravis disease, and what is the tensilon test is it. In the tensilon test, what we are going to do, first suppose that in the myasthenia gravis patient, suppose that this is the two nerve terminals, we can see the pre and post. Suppose that here is the receptors are located, the acetylcholine will be released here from there, and we can see here is the antibody is masking this. It means what? The antibodies against the neuromuscular receptors are formed, and these acetylcholine are not able to bind to them. It means what? They are not able to bind. It means that decreases the contraction of our muscle in the myasthenia gravis. What happened in the cholinergic crisis? There is a indirect cholinergic drugs will be taken, and these drugs will be going to release in them, and they increases the acetylcholine amount. What happened in the cholinergic crisis? After that, the longer duration of action of these drugs will leads to the down regulation of neuromuscular receptors, and further they decreasing the contraction of these muscles. So we can say from here, in the cholinergic crisis, what happened? Decreasing the muscle contraction, and in the myasthenia gravis also decreasing the muscle contraction. But in the myasthenia gravis, there is an antibody produces against the neuromuscular receptor. We can see here adrophonium test or the tensilon test. We can see what we are going to do. First, the administration of adrophonium. We are going to administer the adrophonium inside the patient body, and when the any symptoms, what the symptoms in the basically in myasthenia gravis is appearing, it gets improved. The symptoms is gets improving. So we can say like this: the patient is suffer from the myasthenia gravis. If we inject the or administer the adrophonium inside the patient body, and the symptoms is gets worsened, the symptoms is gets more worsen and worsen, then the patient is suffer from the cholinergic crisis, because the adrophonium is, after the injecting the adrophonium, we also going to inject some medications before it, for the prevention of their side effect. We are injecting the atropine as an anti-muscarinic agent. So this is the all about the testing pattern. We are going to how identify either the patient suffer from the cholinergic crisis or the myasthenia gravis. Next drug is, after physiostigmine, we can say neostigmine. Neostigmine is used in the treatment of myasthenia gravis. Which drug is used in the diagnosis of myasthenia gravis? We can see here adrophonium. Next point, we can see the neostigmine is used in the treatment of the myasthenia gravis, and they are also acting as a non-depolarizing skeletal muscle relaxant, and they are reversal of the skeletal muscle relaxant. It means the patient is having taking any drug and the non-depolarizing drugs in the nicotinic muscular receptors action, there gets reversal in that also. In the patient is having cobra bite, a snake bite. A snake bite is basically cobra is neurotoxin agent. They are binding to the postsynaptic nerve terminals, and they also decreasing the muscle contraction, and it leads to the respiratory paralysis of the patient, and the patient gets dry. That the respiratory paralysis is due to the muscle contraction is absent in that patient, because these drugs are binding to the postsynaptic nerve terminals. All the cholinergic receptors will be gets binded, or they gets fitted through the neurotoxins. And next one is bladder atony and the gastroparesis. In these all cases, the neostigmine drug will be used. Next point, we can see pyridostigmine. In the pyridostigmine, they are the orally or they are the long-lasting drugs. They are used in also treatment in myasthenia gravis. They are used in postural hypertension. Why they are used in postural hypertension? The pyridostigmine drug. The pyridostigmine drug are basically, we can say like this: when the patient is sleeping, suppose that the patient is having dilated veins is appeared, the veins of the patient body will be gets dilated. It leads to the pooling of blood is increased, and what the blood is reaching to our heart will be decreased. It means the decreasing in the venous return or the venous blood system will be decreased in our heart. It leads to the patient is having postural hypertension is developed in the patient because of the venous return is decreases. So we use pyridostigmine is the drug of choice. Why use pyridostigmine? We discuss later in the antihypertensive drug or the hypertensive drug. Now we are going to see in the pyridostigmine what the pyridostigmine main mechanism. They increasing the acetylcholine. After the taking drugs, the acetylcholine mechanism is increasing from the post-ganglionic sympathetic nervous system. Now you know from the beginning the parasympathetic system and sympathetic system, they are working from their nerve circuits begins, or they starting from the spinal cord, and they gets originated and they're moving into the presynaptic ganglion and then forming ganglion and then postsynaptic ganglion, or so we can say like this: preganglionic neurons, postganglionic neurons, and the ganglions. The postganglionic neurons of the sympathetic nervous system are gets innervated in the different parts of our body. Same as the parasympathetic, the postganglionic fibers or the postganglionic neurons are innervating the different parts of our body also. Same. For now, in this pyridostigmine or the patient having postural hypertension, what is happening? The norepinephrine is released when the sympathetic nervous system of the postganglionic fibers or the postganglionic neurons is activating in the sympathetic nervous system. It released norepinephrine. You have to know from the previous topic, because the norepinephrine is released by the postganglionic neurons of the sympathetic nervous system, and it leads to on the blood vessels, they cause vasoconstriction. The vasoconstriction in the blood vessels is leads to prevention of postural hypotension. So this is the mechanism of this drug action. Next point, we can see the management of myasthenia gravis. If the patient is suffer from the myasthenia gravis, what is happened? There is patient is having three main different types of the myasthenia gravis seen. We can see generalized, ocular, and myasthenia gravis crisis. If the patient is having generalized myasthenia gravis, we are going to take or give the patient is having pyridostigmine, and in the ocular myasthenia gravis management, we giving the patient pyridostigmine also. If the patient is not responding to the pyridostigmine, in the case of ocular manifestation of the myasthenia gravis, the patient is not responding on the pyridostigmine drug, we are going to give immunomodulators. When the ocular manifestation of the myasthenia gravis, when the generalized myasthenia gravis manifestation, we are giving to pyridostigmine, or after that we are going to give steroid drugs. If the patient is also not responding in the myasthenia gravis, so we are giving to the immunomodulator drugs. What are the immunomodulator drugs? They are improving our immune system. They are the immune booster drugs. What are it? We can see the first one is cyclosporin. Next one is azathioprine, mycophenolate mofetil. We can see cyclophosphamide and the rituximab. These are the 5 drugs are the immunomodulator drugs. In the myasthenia gravis, we are giving the patient IVIG. IVIG is basically intravenous immunoglobulins are given to the patient. It is also giving the IVIG in the patient having Guillain-Barré syndrome disease or the Kawasaki disease. They are the 2 diseases which also giving the what? The drugs are IVIG, intravenous immunoglobulins are given to the patient. If these drugs are not available or we are not going to these drugs, there is also alternative treatment of the patient is having. If the patient is suffer from the myasthenia crisis, we are also going to give plasmapheresis to these patients. So this is the all about the cholinergic drugs, and hope it will be understanding for you. When you not understand about the cholinergic drugs, it's very important to know about it. You don't know, you have to know it. You have to do many work about it or understand these topics. Now I'm going to tell about a small review about the whole cholinergic system. You can see from the top, because it's very important to know about it. You know the parasympathetic action will be increasing and the sympathetic will be going to reduce everything except some exception you have to know. And I'm not going to tell all the time about the parasympathetic and sympathetic system. In the next topic, we are going to discuss about the sympathetic system. Before the sympathetic system, there's one part of the our autonomic nervous system or the parasympathetic system is left now, that is anticholinergic drugs. What are the opposite action of these drugs we are discussing now? That is cholinergic drugs and their opposite action. These drugs are called as anticholinergic drugs or the antimuscarinic drug, antinicotinic drugs. We are discussing in the next part of it. So for now it's all, and thank you from my side, and try to memorize all the things what we are delivering here. And when any problem or any query about these topics, you can message me directly or call me and ask me anything frequently. So don't worry about it. Thank you. Take care. Bye.